Welcome to America's Future. My guest today is Dr. Mildred Jefferson. She's a Texas-born person that served as general surgeon with the former Boston University Medical Center as assistant clinical professor of surgery at Boston University. And she served there as the professor for many years. She is the first Negro woman to graduate from Harvard Medical School in Boston. She has 28 honorary degrees. She is the founding member of the state and nation's Right to Life movement, and she's currently president of the Right to Life Crusade. And I have many more credits, but she received some awards from Father Flanagan's Boys Town in Nebraska, and I just can't read them all, but welcome again and back to Windham, New Hampshire, Dr. Jefferson. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bill McNally.
Thank you. Okay, our subject today is the Right to Life movement. So let me ask you, what is the Right to Life pro-family movement?
Well, I always create that designation because our Right to Life movement is dedicated to defending the worth and dignity of each innocent human life from conception to natural death. And when we speak of the Right to Life movement, we are committed to defending the right to life of all human beings, born and unborn, from conception to natural death, defending against abortion, infanticide, euthanasia, any manner of infanticide, no matter whether you are at the one-cell stage, and that would include cloning and embryonic stem cell research. So that when we speak of the pro-family movement, that brings together all of our organizations that are dedicated to defending the Judeo-Christian moral tradition as the basis of the laws and customs of our country. And that includes not only organizations that have multiple agendas, defending marriage, for example, as between one man and one woman, the National Rifle Association, Gun Owners Action League of Massachusetts, and nationwide, but all of the organizations that have joined together to defend traditional moral values and the things that have kept the nation strong. The Right to Life movement brings together people from all political philosophies and some with no political philosophy at all. People of all social and economic backgrounds, all religions, and no religion at all. As president of National Right to Life Committee, I had the honor of leading the movement into the conservative coalition, even though the majority of Right to Lifers are neither conservative nor Republican. But they represent the broad middle class of the country for the most part that carry on the everyday work of the world. But it brings together Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and mostly middle-of-the-road Democrats, so that when we have a pro-life Republican president sitting in the White House, it's because we have millions of pro-life Democrats who vote to put them there. The cleverness of the strategy devised by National Democratic Party Chairman Dr. Howard Dean and Senator Schumer of New York, with all those who helped them across the country, is that they specifically this time recruited Democratic candidates that they considered to be pro-life, or that they thought could at least pass as pro-life. One of the things that has been most difficult for us as a movement was the use of former Governor Bob Case's son to run against Senator Rick Santorum, the long-term pro-life Republican senator from Pennsylvania, because when Governor Casey was alive, even though he had won re-election as a Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, by the largest plurality ever recorded in a governor's race in Pennsylvania. The National Democratic Convention apparatus would not allow him, as a pro-life governor, to speak at the National Democratic Convention. And now, in 2006, the party having recruited his son specifically to defeat the pro-life Republican senator because they knew that name Casey was still magic. I hope his son, as the current Democratic senator from Pennsylvania, proves worthy of the accord that his father's name brought him and the votes that his father's name brought him. So we will see, but that was a very, very hard thing to see.
How do these right-to-life movement groups work together?
Well, sometimes with great difficulty and sometimes not quite meshing. But in general, we recommend that people fight the battles they are fighting. And when they want to participate in other groups that have different agendas or multiple agendas as against the single agenda that Right to Life organizations have, that we do that outside the scope of the given organization, and you work with your allies as individuals, merging into their numbers. We find that that saves some of the difficulty because right now, in many areas, there are conflicts developing because some of the ones who are sound on defending the right to life have wandered off the range when it comes to the idea of defending the definition of marriage as between one man and one woman. So that it's going to take a lot of careful negotiation to keep the coalitions intact, facing that kind of division.
Who sets the agenda for these organizations?
Well, the Right to Life organizations have their agendas set by our national organizations working together. Then we try to get the individual state groups to support it, and the final decisions are made by the voting representatives of the organizations. And that's the difference between the organizations of the Right to Life movement and some other kinds of organizations where you have individuals who simply develop a mailing list and a board of 2 or 3 people make the decisions about what that organization will do. In the Right to Life movement, the Right to Life coalition organizations have agendas set by their members through their elected boards of directors. And that differentiates us from most of the other general organizations which are not truly grassroots organizations.
So you have ways of, how do you communicate with each other and keep your agenda intact, so to speak?
Well, with every means possible. For most people except me, they do it on the internet, and I will not, because I feel that it is too vulnerable to losing your information or having other people get it. And as we get theirs, I know they get ours. So I am not willing to put what I consider critical from a strategic and tactical standpoint into the World Wide Web and network. But we must take advantage of whatever works. We don't have the money for regular television ads, so that we depend very heavily on cable television. And one of our chapters of Massachusetts Citizens for Life, the Margaret O'Hara West Roxbury Roslindale chapter, has a Boston Neighborhood Network weekly cable show called Life Matters. And I co-host that 1 or 2 times of the month. But we also now have it on in about 45 or 50 other surrounding cities and towns throughout the Commonwealth. But it's available to whomever might want to put our program on their systems.
Now, is there anything that we could put up on the screen? I didn't give Jim something that, like a telephone number that someone could call if they wanted to get involved in the Right to Life movement.
I don't have the New Hampshire numbers, but they can call our own Massachusetts number, and we will relay it to the New Hampshire Right to Lifers. And that number in Massachusetts, for Massachusetts Citizens for Life, is 617-242-4199, extension 221. And say, Dr. Jefferson told me to call and see how I can get into Right to Life in New Hampshire. And if they also want to go by, or they can go to masscitizensforlife.org.
masscitizensforlife.org. Okay.
And let them know you want to be connected with Right to Life in New Hampshire, and we'll see that we get you to the right place.
Okay. I'm getting right back to this, my other question, but I did want to take just a moment out here to welcome our guests that
Absolutely.
have friends of yours and mine who have come down. I'd like to just thank Mary Weaver, who, as we know, writes for The Independent, and those,
Yes,
what is
the
it?
column on astronomy.
There you go.
And
you received the Windham.
I do get the Windham
Which-
Independent, and I'm very happy that I do, because I'm actually clipping her column, so I will have
Great.
the whole year's number each year.
And then there's Joan Espinola, who's come down, along with Pat Kennedy and Angie Hyatt. I thank them for coming.
And I'm delighted that they could get here too.
And I just want to mention one thing. I'm wearing my special sweater. It's called the
Yes.
Bobby Knight sweater that my daughter, when she was at Indiana University, purchased for me.
Excellent.
And of course, I did give her $70,000 or $80,000 to go there, but something
Very
like that.
expensive
Something
sweater,
like
Mr.
that.
McNally.
Yes. All right. Right. Listen. How do the organizations relate to the political parties as you see it?
Well, it depends on where you are, because I myself, when we first started our political effort, and I had the honor of starting the political organization for the National Right to Life Committee. And at that time, even though I was a Republican, I kept my registration unenrolled independent so that I could work on both sides of the aisle. In general, we try to go with what is best for the jurisdiction we're in, so that for those who have no strong political inclinations, we are hoping that they register unenrolled, so that at the point that we need them, they can go to whichever major party voting ballot we need at that time. So that in general, when we are working for voter registration, we enroll people as unenrolled, unless there's a specific reason that they have to be Republican or Democratic. In Massachusetts right now, I am so concerned about the beginning balance or rebalancing the power of the parties and the registration between Democratic and Republican is so lopsidedly against Republican that most of my recruiting over the next 2 to 5 years is going to be specifically trying to build up the Republican grassroots base. So we have a substantial number, great number of Democrats, pro-life Democrats registered in Massachusetts. So we don't really have to work on Democratic registration, but we certainly have got to work on Republican pro-life registration.
Okay. How are these organizations, or how will these organizations respond to this latest 206 election catastrophe?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that wistful thinking nor wistful thinking. And they have to understand me clearly when I say wishful thinking or wistful thinking. Neither one will work now. There was a time by just hoping that the goodness of our cause would somehow rise up and influence the minds of the voters. Through 20 or 30 years, we have these beautiful pictures of babies that we put out at election time and say, this little guy wants you to vote pro-life. But if you are facing a well-organized, well-trained grassroots group that has been trained in modern election technology and your people aren't doing it, they're going to beat you. And they're also going to bring out people of your own number to vote against the candidates you're trying to get elected because they have done more precise and more accurate voter prediction and turnout than you have. So that within the grassroots groups of our organizations, they're going to have to go back to very fundamental training. And the reasons are very worthwhile, because when you train a grassroots group in that, you're producing your own new campaign managers, and you're also very likely producing your own new field of candidates for the jobs that you've got to take over. Can't spend all of your time trying to recruit and persuade other people to run. You've got to get out there and run yourself. So when you're looking for a candidate, when you see that you've got somebody on your school committee or at whatever your town management is, or even your state rep, a state senator, and you see that person just is not representing what you believe in, that person you may have to persuade to run is the one that's looking back at you from the mirror. And that's how many of the pro-abortion representatives and senators got in. The pro-abortion groups pushed their own ahead when they could not find ones of our own to either turn to their side or defeat. And we haven't done that enough. We in the pro-life, pro-family movement, have sat back too long, urging other people to get out there and put their necks on the block. And if we cannot protect those necks, we should not ask them to put them down. So that on the other side of it, though, you don't make threats you can't fulfill. So if you see someone in office who is doing what you don't like, doesn't do you any good at all to threaten them unless you have someone to defeat them with. Because you can't defeat someone with no one.
So you're saying get behind a candidate, find the candidate, get out there,
yep,
and get somebody elected that you want to represent you.
Exactly, but people on our side have to understand that since so many have not been political before, it's not unlikely that they may not win the first time. But they should not, once they get the understanding and training of becoming a candidate, they should not get out. If they are able, competent, and have the conviction that they want the job, they should not stop until they get elected.
What do you see here between, of course you can see Massachusetts, or you can see all the states around you, you know what's happening in that movement. Is there anything that's happening in Mass and New Hampshire that you can compare or comment on?
Yes, I'm very much distressed at the political change I've seen in New Hampshire generated by people from Massachusetts. Because I remember years ago when one of your state Democratic chairmen, I think his name was Grand Maison, commented on ending the Republican control that had existed so long in the state. I also heard similar declarations from the former Governor Michael Dukakis of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But I also have heard from time to time comments from the two senators from Massachusetts. And I saw in earnest in 2000 and 2004 how dedicated and diligent they had been in the pursuit of routing Republican control in New Hampshire. And they have succeeded very well. The election of former Governor Jeanne Shaheen was, to me, the culmination of that long-planned Democratic effort launched through Massachusetts. So I'm encouraging the Republicans of New Hampshire to wake up, get back your fighting strength and your fighting zeal, because it's time that you rebuilt and renewed yourself.
Do you see any candidate that's coming up that you like in the presidential race?
Well, in the presidential race, we've got 4 pro-life Republicans running. And at this point, I will not single any one of them out for favor. I will support them to the extent that I will get to whichever candidate can attract voters, pro-life voters. I will try to get those people to him. And I say to him because we don't have any pro-life women running that I know of right now.
So you would encourage then the people to at least ask these candidates these open questions on what their position is on the right to life?
Yes.
And
Every presidential candidate should be required to say, because defending the right to life is the cornerstone of our democratic republic. That is why we have it. And if that man or woman who's running for the presidency or any other office, even town dog catcher, does not understand the obligation of this form of government to ensure and guarantee the right to life, then that man or woman is not qualified to hold office interpreting our form of government or implementing our form of government.
so in this government that we have here, we call this a republic because we set down a rule of laws by which we abide. They're in
Yes,
the
indeed.
Constitution. Now, in a democracy, we have a people who can, the majority can rule. So if the majority in a democracy was to say we want abortion, then they would probably get it.
Yes,
So
but that's
then-
not what we say.
So we need, you're saying that you need people to understand what the republic, that a republic is a representation of law. It protects
Yes.
the minority.
Yes, and that fundamental, why is the law worthwhile? Our highest temporal possession is life, and that is why that foundation makes it obligatory that our form of government defend, ensure, and guarantee the right to life.
You know, I sometimes ask people if they would like to relate any war stories. I know you've been in this movement. There must be some, are there any particular battles that you've been in that you might want to mention?
Well, it's hard to say because every battle that we survive, I consider worth telling about. But obviously, the one that's dearest to my heart is the election of Ronald Reagan. Because when former Governor Dukakis wasn't governor, he was host of a public broadcasting program called The Advocates. And I was invited to appear as a witness on the program one evening. And that was broadcast or telecast from Sacramento. And it just happened that then Governor Reagan, this was in '72, then Governor Reagan happened to see the program. He got a video of it from public broadcasting in Boston, showed it to key members of his staff, got my address from public broadcasting, and got in touch with me. And that's the thing that connected us. And as our correspondence went back and forth, Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton were handed down on January 22nd, 1973. And he wrote me saying that if he had known what he had learned from what I had said on the program, he never would have signed the bill. But he would do everything within his power to try to reverse those decisions, because he felt if he had never signed that bill, that they perhaps wouldn't have taken the actions that they did. But at that point, he had no fixed plans for any political future. But when we started the National Right to Life Committee formally in Detroit in June of '73, I had his letter with that commitment. So later, by the time he did start running, I could certainly go forth over this country letting people know that he had made his commitment long before 1978, 79, and 8.
I'm going to, as Bill says, or Riley says, I'm going to give you the last word. We're counting down. Would you like to just speak to the people and tell them a message that...
Well, the one thing that I would say is that everyone must understand the fight for the right to life is not the cause of a special few, but the cause of every man, woman, and child who cares about not only about his own family, but the whole family of man. We're sympathetic with girls, women who have any manner of problems, some are so extreme we can't even imagine what they are. But we look at life a different way. We know as long as there is life, there is hope, and we have families here in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, all over the country, who would do anything to help a girl, a woman, or family who found an inconvenient or unexpected pregnancy a burden, because we would never want the most innocent, most vulnerable member of our family to have to take the responsibility of the crimes against the mother or crimes against the family, when they have us who love them even though we would never get to meet them, because they are our family, part of us. And we believe that we are created in the image and likeness of God, and every man, every woman is our brother and sister. And our crusade in the Right to Life movement is to save life and love. And that's what we're all about.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming, Dr. Jefferson. It's a privilege to interview you. I'd like to thank the Windham Cable Studio for the opportunity, Jim Dodonna, the cable manager, and all the volunteers that work here. I thank the town of Windham, and I thank you, the viewer, for watching.